Hello everyone and welcome to episode 60 of Overwatch This. It is the last show of the year. I'm Matt, joined by Ben. And we are here to chat largely about what is going to be happening in 2018 with Overwatch, because basically everything's done for the year, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how much of Blizzard are even still in the offices. There's been a few posts by Kaplan, and they're testing a couple of things on the test servers on the PTR, but yeah, you can read about all that on the website. They're testing some stuff to do with like movement and that sort of thing. But we're basically done for the year. We're expecting there to be a patch very early next year, which we'll talk about in a bit, and then we'll be into 2018 and be another year of Overwatch.
So obviously we've seen 2017. Has been a massive year for Overwatch. It's
a lot of updates.
A lot of updates, a lot of changes. Kind of like the game is still incredibly recognisable from what it was at launch, but it definitely is a different game now. And so we can use what we've seen to kind of predict what's coming next year. So obviously, arguably the biggest part of the game is its heroes. That is what it lives and breathes on. So let's talk about heroes in 2018, Ben.
So let's talk numbers, start off with that. We got 3 this year, we got 2 last year, but also last year was when the game actually released. One of the ones that came out this year sort of happened within that window that the game was still in development last year. So basically, when you put all that together, 3 a year is a fairly reasonable rate. They definitely have a lot of ideas. We saw that at BlizzCon with the kind of board of ideas that they've had in the past that they've scrapped, that they've used in future ideas and that have been developed into other stuff. So they certainly have plenty of ammo for creating new heroes. I think Moira shows that they have a lot of different ways that they can go with different ideas. They're still very capable of making very competent heroes that people enjoy playing and enjoy getting used to, and that play very differently from their compatriots. We do now have a support. It feels like the roster is very filled out, so I don't think it's easy to predict what the next character would be.
Yeah, there's not a gap that needs filling.
Maybe a tank, because I think people thought Doomfist was going to be a tank, and then he was offense. Maybe a defense hero, but those are quite hard to make. And of all the roles in the game, defense heroes are definitely the one that has the most weak heroes. Heroes like Mei, heroes like Torbjorn, heroes like Bastion that people just don't play very much at the highest levels. So yeah, I would expect to see 3 next year. I think that's going to start dropping off eventually. They've said they don't want to get to like a League of Legends 120 champions type situation. I can't remember if this was just what I thought when I heard about that, or if there's something they actually said, but somewhere in like the 40 to 50 range I can imagine them stopping. But we haven't even hit 27 yet.
Yeah.
So, I would expect to see 3 next year, get us up to around 29, maybe another 3 the year after that, gets up to about 32, and then maybe it'll start dropping down. They'll also start, after a couple of years, they'll be much better at making heroes. Like, Moira is a very, very good hero, very interesting hero, and very complex hero, and I can imagine them getting into a situation where, much like with League of Legends, they start redesigning heroes,
existing heroes,
rather than putting out new ones. We've already seen this with characters like Symmetra, characters like Bastion a little further back in the beta and that sort of thing. So they've never shied away from redesigning characters if they needed to.
And the thing is, the game's got so much lore, right? It'd be actually interesting to redesign characters on a basis of them pushing the story forward. Like they got new jobs, or they became interested in different elements.
Yeah, and if you can tie that into it, then that would be good. And a lot of the League of Legends stuff goes into doing that as well. And that's certainly a game that I can imagine them basing their ideas off, particularly the more recent League of Legends stuff, where they have had a limited number of heroes every year, and they have been much more lore focused and trying to build a story around it. As far as who the next character will be, we don't really know. Kaplan said to us that it would be a surprise that has been hinted at. To me, that says that we won't be able to guess it until it comes out, and then if you look back, you'll be like, oh, they were hinting at that with this, but that it's quite difficult to put it all together beforehand. Not saying someone won't make a genius Reddit post over the next couple of months while we build up towards that. But I think like predicting it in the same way of like Doomfist would be quite difficult, or in the same way that people were predicting Anna, even though they thought Anna was Sombra for a while, and Sombra obviously was very heavily hinted at and very clearly a new hero that was coming. We'll also start to see this idea of characters that people have asked for starting to happen. Now, I think that's probably more of a 2019 thing, but if you assume that from initial ideation to character release probably takes around a couple of years, like from literally the very base idea of something, then characters like the Junker Queen that people have requested, characters like Alejandra that people are very excited about and like hearing more about, and even characters like Effie, who we originally thought was going to be a hero, and then it turned out it was this robot she built. I can imagine all of that starting to come in, whether it'll be those three or it'll be other characters that people have built hype around that we'll start to see, I don't know. But I think in 2018 we might start to see that, and certainly in 2019 people will start discussing, what has the community asked for, because it'll actually get to the point where if they had started working on that now, it would actually be possible for it to come out. So yeah, that's what it is with characters. As far as a release schedule, I would guess something like March, July, November. I think you're always going to get a new character in November because they can announce it at BlizzCon and then it's playable, and then it hits the test server, and then it comes out a couple of weeks later. So yeah, I would always base around the idea that you're going to get a hero in November and then work back from there. So something like that I would expect.
So characters obviously change everybody's play style, and kind of that's great for the people on the server that manages to actually get the new character. There's always that battle, right?
Got an SSD?
Of course, yeah. But the way that we can change the experience for everybody is new maps, right? And kind of like Blizzard have been pretty good at that this year. And we already know that the next year is going to kick off with Blizzard World, which is, certainly the map that seems to have perhaps had the most love put into it, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think Blizzard World is probably their most impressive map so far in terms of design. I don't know what it's going to play out like in terms of, actual winning and strategies that are going to be on the map and that sort of thing. But it's certainly the map that they've built the most hype around that I think people are most interested in seeing put into the game. I also think it is a good map. I think it is well put together. It's got a nice kind of feel to it, the way that you push the payload and that sort of thing. And I think it all operates quite well around the design of the map as well. And it's quite a well put together thing. Oasis came out. Was the version of Blizzard World for for 2017.
3rd of January,
it came out
right?
on literally the 3rd of January. Yeah, so I would expect Blizzard World very, very quickly after Blizzard get back into the office. This year, the patch day is normally a Tuesday. That would be the 2nd of January, but it would also be the first day they were back in the office. So maybe patch day will be a bit later, or they'll leave it until the 2nd week. But I would expect it very, very soon after we come back from the holidays. And that also means that in terms of patches and stuff, you'll probably see a new patch hit the test server pretty quickly after the holidays as well, probably in that 2nd week of January. So that's something to look forward to. Interestingly, unlike last year, we got very early last year, or even in 2016, they said, we're going to have this number of maps this year. We're going to have like 6 maps, and they're going to be X number of CP maps and that sort of thing. We don't have that this year. We don't have any kind of promise about that sort of thing. They've been putting more of those hints towards skins, like we heard, oh yeah, Hanzo's getting X skins or whatever it was. Oh, Widowmaker's definitely getting a skin soon. We heard that like slightly before Uprising and that sort of thing. So we don't have as much of an idea as we did this time last year about what we'll be getting maps-wise. But I would expect a similar release cadence, if not a little bit faster, and a lot of that sort of ties into the eSports stuff, which is what we're going to go on to next, where maps are very, very important to how that whole ecosystem works.
The Overwatch League has actually started. We had the pre-season, it's just been in the more recent weeks, and then in January on the 10th, right, the actual league starts properly. And this is going to be Overwatch's first kind of like moment where we start to see esports kind of impact in the larger game, right? This year is going to learn a lot from it, and it's not just going to be the league and being able to watch a better game happening, but it's going to affect us as well, right? Just the normal players.
It's definitely going to affect your average player. So yeah, January 10th it all kicks off properly. Over the year we also have contenders, which is kind of the D League, the development stuff, and there'll also be another World Cup, I expect. I don't think they've announced it officially yet, but it's very clear that's something they want to do, and it fills out the back half of the year as well. So yeah, that's what's going on with the esports stuff. We have no idea what viewership's going to be like, for example, because the preseason wasn't on Twitch. It's still expected that the normal season will be, but as far as I know, they haven't made like an official announcement about that. It's very possible they'll want to keep it off Twitch because they don't want to reveal those viewership numbers, because they're probably not going to be super, super high. Like, they're not going to be comparable to a Counter-Strike Global Offensive Major, for example, which is the level of money that's being invested in this. But there is going to be change. Like, this is going to kick off. It's probably not going to kick off and be this like titanic global league that they want it to be eventually. It's probably also not going to be the apocalypse that the haters are hoping for. It's going to be somewhere in the middle, and then there will be change to that system, and they'll be fixing things the whole year round, and it won't be until, I mean, maybe not even 2019, but like 2020 before we really see like, is the Overwatch League a success and that sort of thing. And I'm looking forward to seeing that. But what will be interesting and what will start happening very soon is how this actually impacts the content that we get in the game. We already know about skins. Get your Overwatch League skins, get your Houston Outlaws, Diva, whatever it is that you want. Get your Dynasty skins. Xayah, that's going to be my pickup, I think. But how it will also impact game balance and game design is more interesting. So when StarCraft 2 came out, just an example here, it had all these maps, and they were all very small, and they were all awful, it turns out. Nobody knew they were awful. They persisted through beta. Some of them were very clearly bad, and those ones weren't played professionally. But plenty of others, people were like, yeah, this is probably fine. You know, it's got bases, it's got stuff. And then it turns out that they're just completely, you know, don't work with the structure of the game in terms of the competitive scene that built up around it, and it meant that it was very easy to kind of rush people and that sort of thing. We're going to see the same thing for Overwatch. At least one, probably more of the maps that are in the game at the moment is not going to survive contact with the Overwatch League. Now, whether they start to redesign those maps, or they have map pools that change, or you know, other stuff happens around that where you just start to get more maps, but we will start to see changes happen that we wouldn't have seen otherwise, because there's going to be so much pressure on the play field that is being, you know, fought over being a fair game, and it not, you know, always coming down to the same team comps or everyone having a massive advantage on defense. And while the win rates on maps are very even, I think the worst they said they've seen is like 47-53 with, I think it was Eichenwald, like on defense is very, very strong on that map. And they do try to pull that towards 50% as much as they can. Once you get into a pro scene and you want it to be balanced for a pro scene, that is very, very different. You know, maybe the win rate will be like 80% on Eichenwald defense, because people know how to defend that map, and it turns out there really aren't any ways to get past it if you aren't playing with, you know, uncoordinated teams. So we're going to start seeing that sort of thing, and it'll be up to Blizzard to decide, you know, what do we want to balance around. And I hope that they will choose the pro scene, because players like me and you can always just learn what to do,
exactly,
rather than bouncing around us, and then the pros, you know, they can't do anything. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff in game that's going to kind of funnel people towards Overwatch League as well, like the skins. I expect there'll be an event, and we'll come on to that next.
Okay, so Overwatch is characterized as much by its heroes and its maps, but it's an event-driven game. You know, we spend an awful lot of time kind of, you know, waiting between these big moments that run throughout the year. And we've got used to that now. You know, we started in 2016 where we had like half a year where we were like, oh wow, this is quite interesting. I like, you know, bringing this almost MMO-like elements into a shooter. And then we got the jackpot to a degree through this year. We've had some great events. Now, do you perceive, Ben, that this is something that will carry on, or are things going to slow down, maybe?
So I don't think we can get as many new events as people are used to getting. I think all of the ones that we have so far will probably return. Kaplan said as much to us that Anniversary Uprising and Year of the Rooster will be renamed to the new Chinese New Year event. But all of those are coming back, and I don't, you know, they're definitely going to bring Halloween back. That's super popular. They've proved they want to bring Winter Wonderland back. So I expect to see all of those again. Summer Games came back as well. I think Summer Games is probably the one that was the most up for debate, because there was no Summer Games to base it around. But yeah, we get an event that lasts 3 weeks, roughly every 5 weeks. And I think that's a really, really good cadence. And they said they're going to add more stuff to the base loot boxes to kind of fill the gap next year. That's going to happen very early next year. I expect we'll see some of that stuff on the test server in that first patch that I mentioned earlier. So yeah, you know, events are definitely going to be coming back. Kaplan said to us that they want to find a unique way of doing Uprising and Anniversary, because those are more lore-focused events. And they want to make sure that the gameplay that was unique last year gets to come back, but then they get to build on top of that. So, you know, they want to make sure that you can still play that King's Row Uprising map that they made with the wave defense and that sort of thing, but that there will also be new content. And,
maybe we'll get the same mode on a different map, because it's probably quite easy to translate that wave mobile defense kind of force into a new
and I think if you look at what happened with Winter Wonderland this year, where they brought back last year's mode and then they built another mode that was different and was more casual focused, because you can play May Snowball Offensive, you can get quite into it. You know, you can work out strategies and that sort of thing. You can play a lot of it, whereas the Yeti thing is a lot more casual and a lot more focused on individual kind of, I'll play a couple of games of this and I'll go back to normal Overwatch. So I think you'll start to see, like, you know, each event will have its more hardcore event and then a more casual event. For example, in Summer Games as well, we saw them actually add like a competitive version of Lucio Ball, and they changed that around, they made it more interesting. And I think we'll see upgrades to old events, and we'll also see new bits added on where they can get it. So that's all pretty exciting, and I think they'll want to continue that. It's just think about it in terms of like player numbers, right? So you have players leaving and coming back to the game all the time, but if you can focus that and you can be like, hey, you know, let's bring everybody back for this anniversary event this year, this week, and then you've got kind of 3 weeks where that starts to die down, and then you have kind of normal Overwatch for a bit, and then you spike it again because you bring back Summer Games, or you bring back Halloween or whatever, and they get to make trailers, and they get to write press releases, and, you know, we make videos about that stuff because we're interested. The community is really interested in that stuff. You know, there's always a boost on how many Reddit posts you see and that sort of thing around those events, because there's always people coming back, and that all feeds back into the ecosystem. Even if those people are coming back and they're not paying for loot boxes, and they're not playing the new modes, if they're just playing normal Overwatch, if they're just playing regular quick match, not even competitive play, all of those people are now just kind of generating content, making sure that queue times are shorter and that people get to play what they want and that sort of thing. So events are a huge part of the Overwatch ecosystem. If you think about it from a more business perspective, they are as important for Blizzard as they are for players just getting new stuff to play with. I also think there will be an Overwatch League event. I don't think it'll be like on January 10th because that will be the Chinese New Year event for one thing. But also, I just don't think that they'll want to have that for then. I think they'll want to have it for finals at some point.
Yeah.
Those are going to be during the summer. Now, whether that's going to kind of tie into Summer Games, maybe Summer Games will be Overwatch League flavoured this year. That'd be an interesting way of doing it. But there's going to be loads of stuff for Overwatch League kind of tying into the game in that way, and they'll want to exploit the event system. We do know that there's two separate teams. There is like an Overwatch League team and the Overwatch development team, but obviously they're very closely connected. And yeah, with all the Overwatch League stuff that they are already adding in, like the skins and that sort of thing, plus the default loot boxes, I think we're going to see a lot of new skins and new cosmetics next year.
Right, so that's everything that we pretty much know is definitely going to happen. We don't know the specifics of it, but we know there's events. We know that there's heroes. That is
heroes, maps, events you can bet on, and then we know eSports is the thing as well.
Yeah, but obviously, this is Blizzard. They're a company that are known to pull surprises out the bag. Their other games have changed significantly and in odd ways. Where do you think Overwatch is going to go that we're just going to speculate about? What is the special event that we might get this year?
There's two things. One is a little more predictable than the other. The first is the idea of like a competitive ladder overhaul. There's a need for like maybe not a role select type system, but something that lets people go, I am a good support player. I am a terrible offense player. Do not match me with other supports because I'm happy to play Mercy on my team. Vice versa as well. I think people will need to have multiple roles that they are good at. Need to incorporate hero switching into that. There is definitely a competitive overhaul needed. That's what all the professionals say. All the really high tier community creators say. When I spoke to Stylosa at BlizzCon, he was talking about that. That's kind of the major thing that he wants. It's something along those lines, some kind of team builder system that you don't just jump into a game with 5 randos and it turns out 4 of them are Mercy mains and then you just can't build a viable team. So I think that's almost certainly going to happen. That is also happening in other Blizzard games. We've seen Heroes of the Storm has recently launched a kind of performance-based matchmaking thing. It went horribly wrong. They've had to reboot their system twice. They've had to restart the whole season twice. That is a learning experience that will be passed across the entire company. Hearthstone is working on a competitive ladder update because its competitive ladder is bad. It just isn't a fun way to play the game. It's mostly about grinding, about just getting through as many games as possible. It doesn't feel skillful even when it is. And getting to Legend is kind of the only thing that's interesting there. And then, as we've said, Overwatch does need this. So I think all of that experience within the company will probably come together in some way to create new ladder systems for a bunch of their different games. And that is stuff that we've seen that happen in the past. Like you can look at the way Diablo definitely influenced the latest World of Warcraft expansion. You can look at the way that performance-based matchmaking in Overwatch that was there a little bit, where like your SR would change a little bit based on how you did in the match, how that influenced Heroes of the Storm. You can look at Heroes of the Storm's kind of reboot into a loot box system was obviously something that came from Overwatch. So we know that they use different games to test different things and then bring it into a larger whole once they know what's successful and what works and what they think might work for their individual games. So I think there is definitely going to be a competitive overhaul. Exactly how it works or when it is, that's all just massively speculative. Speaking of massively speculative, so there is a lot going on at the moment with Blizzard's job boards.
Yes.
We post about this quite a lot. They have 174 openings over in Irvine. And if you want to apply, then go ahead, jobs.blizzard.com. But the most interesting ones are for unannounced projects, with a lot more postings for unannounced projects and for incubation. So incubation is the idea of new projects that might not turn into video games. All companies do this. Companies like Blizzard do it quite a bit more than others, as far as I can tell, where, it'll be like someone will go, okay, I have this idea for a game, and then they work on it for a bit, and then it turns out it doesn't really work as a game, but hey, maybe it works as a World of Warcraft system, or maybe it works as a Diablo system, or maybe it's a good idea for a new Diablo game that they're working on, and then they can take those ideas and move them over, and, the company's very fluid, and people are always moving between teams. One of the lead World of Warcraft kind of systems designers recently moved to Hearthstone in quite a big way, and that's quite surprising, and he'll almost certainly do great work over there. So you know that there's this fluidity going on. Then there's the unannounced projects. And unannounced projects aren't quite the same in that they are actually games. It's stuff that we're almost certainly definitely going to see. And you can tell because it's like they are hiring very specifically for, oh, this is a software designer who's going to be focused on gameplay. This is a kind of generic gameplay designer. This is a sound designer or a SFX designer. And they've had a lot of stuff go up for a new Blizzard FPS of some kind.
And there's quite an interesting one, right?
Yeah, and there's specifically one that went up this week, which had to do with vehicles. It was literally I think it was software engineer, gameplay, vehicles. So the only IP they have currently that really fits into is Overwatch.
Yeah.
StarCraft, it could be into that, but StarCraft is a much less known IP and not something that they need to expand on. Now, it could be a whole new thing, it could be a whole new IP, but there is a lot of hints that the first-person project they're working on is similar to Overwatch in a bunch of different ways. So it's very possible this is for an Overwatch single player of some kind. You're flying Tracer's fighter jet.
Yeah, we had this quite big discussion last night about the idea. Like, so my perspective is like we just didn't get the comic right. The comic disappeared down the drain basically, and we don't have our origin stories. We don't have the story of Overwatch as a team.
Yeah.
A single player is the perfect way to both get that origin story for your first 7-8 missions, and then your latter half of the game actually pushes the narrative forward, and we see like knock-on effects in Overwatch itself.
Yeah, and then when this initially started coming off, I was like, no, I don't think they would advertise it as an unannounced project because they could just say we need Overwatch designers. Yeah. But then there's the very specific stuff that you need, like vehicles. You don't want to tie that to Overwatch because people are like, well, that doesn't really work in the multiplayer.
Yeah, we're not going to turn it into Battlefield,
like,
right?
It's not going to have. I mean, maybe they are, but yeah, that doesn't really work as an idea. Certainly not within the main game of Overwatch. So if you just hide it as an unannounced project, it means people will be like, "Oh shit, there's a new Blizzard FPS coming," but they won't be able to turn that into speculation as we are doing of a single player version of Overwatch. It's something that people definitely want. It's something that will do brilliantly. Like imagine if you own Overwatch, it's 15 quid, and if you don't, you can buy like a package for 40 or 30 pounds or whatever. And that gets you this, you play through a campaign, maybe you play as like a few different heroes. I don't think it would be a thing where you play as all the different heroes.
No.
But they could, they could tie in all their stuff to do with animation, all their in-game animation stuff that they were doing.
Yeah, and you'd want those characters to feel like they do, right?
Exactly, and it means they could build out a little more story, particularly about characters that are within the main the main Overwatch plot lines, so people like Soldier 76, but maybe who haven't had their plots developed that much. Again, like Soldier 76 hasn't really. I would hope it wouldn't all be Tracer focused because we know quite a lot about Tracer, but she is, the cover girl. She is the character that has the most focus on her. So that's what I'm hoping to see. We definitely won't hear anything about that until BlizzCon this year.
At the earliest, right?
At the earliest. It might not even be a project we hear anything about until 2019. Interestingly, Alan Adham, and he's the guy who's in charge of the incubation department, he came back to the company a couple of years ago and he did an interview in which he basically said, you'll find out in a couple of years, how successful me coming back to the company has been. He also, at BlizzCon this year, looked like he was about 3 words away from saying what he was working on, and then maybe decided right there on stage that he would stick to the plan and he wouldn't announce anything. So we've got a lot of stuff coming up. I think Overwatch is going to be a big part of that. I think it would make sense to make some kind of single player Overwatch thing. I think it would sell insanely well, and I think if they can make it cheap enough that that selling it at about 15 quid is profitable, so long as some percentage of the Overwatch fan base buys it, I think they'd be silly not to. And I expect people like Michael Chu and other members on the team would be very excited about doing that sort of thing as well.
And that is it for our look forward to what we can be expecting from Overwatch in 2018. Hopefully you've enjoyed what we've got to say. Hopefully you've got a few ideas of your own. If you do, there's a comment section below if you just want to drop them in there. Also, why not like and subscribe? And there's a bunch more of these, 60 of them that you can watch. You might have nothing to do over Christmas. Yeah, every single one of them. But we'll be back in January. We'll be back the first week of January, so we've got a little bit of time off. We want to go and play some Overwatch ourselves, obviously. But until then, good luck and have fun.